Welcome to it. Sunday Lives here with the Average Joe Sports Show. That is the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, the Pride of Fairbury, Elijah Herbel, Denver fan, and Chris Schmidt with you. Guys, we'll talk Nebraska, Michigan. We'll get your thoughts in the stream. Like and subscribe. Tell a buddy. And find us if you don't subscribe, the Average Joe Sports Show YouTube. Also, a couple of spots on Twitter, AJ Sports Radio, AJ Sports Pod. We'll get into the game, but I'm interested about kind of the experiences you guys, soaked in pre and even the post game. I'll say this, folks were still having a good time. The weather was incredible all day yesterday. Folks were throwing beers and just still enjoying downtown. Neighbor is still wearing Nebraska gear as he was mowing this morning. Now, I don't know if he just woke up and said, I'm going to leave it on or what. But and then the two other neighbors, they still have their Husker flags flying out front of their home. Now, maybe that's for volleyball, but a lot of different ways to go about this from a tone and tenor standpoint. And 8 more games left this season. So how was it, fellas? Pre and post, I know, and I appreciate everybody coming by that stopped by Salt Mine City Brewing. Awesome to see Black Hills Brandon. Great to see Don. Great to see the Snitley boys and all the other folks that popped by our pre and our post game. Nebraska fans disappointed again. But, fellas, to me, there wasn't the anger or the irritation, yes, that you didn't win a close ball game, but you weren't just flat out, or at least the feedback I got. I mean, man, they had it. Michigan's pretty good. Well, we'll see what happens next time. That's kind of my ballpark yesterday.
Well, the glass half full look is, if you look back at the last decade, there's not many games where Nebraska would be losing by 1 score if they give up 300 yards on the ground. That's the glass half full look. The glass half empty look is the fact that you gave up 300 yards on the ground.
and Michigan could have buried you. Michigan's probably a couple of touchdowns better than what they showed yesterday. Now, that's not Nebraska's fault. Nebraska fought back. It just didn't sync up. You worked your ass off to tie that thing after botching a chance to take the lead early in the game. And you're down 10-0. You tie it at 10, 2 minutes left. They rip off a monster run and go up 17-10. And then you answer with a Hail Mary. That was about 3 or 4 minutes of back and forth and complimentary football. But when the offense had it rolling, defense couldn't get it stopped. When the defense got to stop, the offense wasn't ready in the second half, or Michigan did bad things. So, I mean, it's a continued chase for this Nebraska football team.
Well, I mean, the whole town was juiced yesterday. It was great. It felt like a big game, and people were excited. And, I predicted Nebraska would win 24-21, and it wasn't necessarily so much about Nebraska. It was more about, I thought Nebraska was catching Michigan at the right time. I think this Michigan team in a month will look different. And they're still Michigan, but they're not vintage Michigan. And if you're going to catch Michigan and you feel like you still have work to do, but this might be the time to beat them, I thought yesterday was the time to beat them. So it's just another missed opportunity to validate that this process is working, that you're headed in the right direction. Because at some point, there's no more excuses. It's facts. You got to win games like this. And it was such an uneven game yesterday. And I even now at 10:30 in the morning, after the game ends at 6 o'clock last night, there are parts of the game that I'm having trouble wrapping my arms around. Now, the football 101, I don't have any problem wrapping my arm around that. Nebraska got their ass kicked in football 101 yesterday. That's blocking and tackling and playing in the trenches. And they got reminded about how the Big Ten is built and good teams in the Big Ten, what they do, and it's in the trenches. If you think I'm lying, you probably watched the game at 6:30 and we're like, oh, Sharpie's not lying. You build in the trenches. I'm not saying anything out of pocket. That's how it works. But it was such an uneven game because Nebraska could have gotten beat by 3 touchdowns, and Nebraska could have won that game. Michigan left the door open for Nebraska, and Nebraska was fumbling and stumbling up the stairs and kind of fell down this, fell over the step to get into the door, and kind of then the door shut. It was just a weird game yesterday where, yeah, Nebraska could have got beat by 3 touchdowns, and they also could have found a way to win it, and you would have been like, okay. When you're trying to get to that point, sometimes you need to win games that you don't play your best, but yesterday was not one of those days. Nebraska didn't do a very good job of playing in the margins, which they've got to do to beat teams like Michigan that have better offensive line and defensive line, but yet you have the better quarterback. I don't know, weird game yesterday, and the reality is Nebraska's 3-1, and they got some things to work on, but they also, guys, have some things that we were concerned about before kickoff yesterday and are not going away.
You know, the old Dennis Green line is they are who they thought they were, and others, Bill Parcells, we are what our record says we are, something like that. I go back 2 years ago, Nebraska got shellacked by Michigan, 45-7, and it took kind of a fluke 71-yard touchdown run to preserve Nebraska from being shut out for the first time since 1996. If you go back 2 years and you go back to yesterday, is Michigan a national championship team like it was then? No. Is Nebraska having to survive just so they don't get shut out? No. So I think that there has been probably market improvement for Nebraska. There's been a step back, as you would expect from Michigan. And I think Nebraska has made progress to a certain extent, but Nebraska was not better than Michigan yesterday. I'm kind of surprised. At times, I'm surprised it was the 3-point game. And it was a missed field goal away from being a tie game and going into overtime. Nebraska didn't miss a makeable field goal. If Nebraska scores a touchdown on its first drive, that was very creative, had some improvisation. It was an exciting opening drive. Nebraska did exactly what it needed to do other than do what I've said it has to do, and that's score from the 5-yard line. And if I hear the word analytics again out of a coach's mouth, because this is what the data says, hey, you want to go ask Justice Rhodey someday what Dad thinks of analytics. Look, okay, this is what the numbers say, but this is what the book says we should do. No, you say what we should do. It's 4th down and 2 from the 3-yard line. What are we going to do? You're getting paid to coach by feel and what you know your team can do. Well, the book says, so I guess we got it. The only time you really should have to, again, I'm going off on a tangent here. What's the math on a touchdown? And are you down by 3 or 5 or whatever? Do we go for 2 then? Okay, analytics and math. But the analytics say we should do this. No, you're the coach. What should you do? What are you feeling from your team? I don't disparage Nebraska for going for it on the opening drive, but don't fall back on this is what the numbers say. This is what the book says. That's what a caddy says to a golfer. We're 142 out. I'd hit your 9.
Well, analytics doesn't have eyeballs.
Exactly.
Analytics does not have emotions. So let's talk about this. It was going to be a tight game, and so points are at a premium, and you're trying to build up some confidence. And I said before the game, I think when we were talking, Elijah and Schmidt yesterday, Nebraska couldn't be chasing all day. Nebraska had to play with a lead, because if you're playing with a lead, there's probably a good chance that Underwood's going to have to throw the football. And that's exactly what you want to do. But if you're playing from behind, Michigan can kind of dictate what they want to do. So even if it was 3-0, you still have a lead. And who knows, maybe it could have been 6-0. But analytics doesn't have eyeballs or emotion. So they can't see that after Barney gets 7 and you then go with a goddamn fade of 2nd and 3, and it's not really a fade. So I'm in my head thinking they've got 3 plays to get the ball 3 yards forward, run the ball. Then they go back to Emmett. It's stopped. The play call was kind of interesting on 4th down, but I was already taken aback by the 2nd down call. And at that point, you need points. I know you want to be aggressive, but I think you got to be smarter than that in this football game with where your team is at right now, because if you couldn't get 3 yards in 2 plays behind that offensive line that you have against them, which already on the opening drive, Michigan was showing pressure with 4 and they were starting to get home. Dillon had just made some nice sneaky plays on that opening drive. I think you say, hey, buck it up, guys. Cunanan, let's go. Kick the field goal. We're up 3-0. You know, and would it have made a difference? Okay, you can do the math. You know where it's going here. But I think it would have made the difference in terms of now you play with a lead, okay? Instead of you're chasing and you're down 10-0.
And there's a lot of talk about the fourth down play call itself. I didn't hate the play call itself, but I'm with Sharp. I didn't like what second and third down were before you got to fourth down. That's my bigger issue. The shovel pass has worked for you in the past, maybe not this season. And I know it was a different offensive line last year, but with how Michigan was getting up the field with their defensive ends, it kind of made some sense to try to power through the middle with your most powerful runner. And I am still surprised they did not review that spot with Lindenmeyer reaching the ball out. He was on top of bodies and he was closer than the refs gave him credit for. I don't know if they would have overturned anything. I don't know if he picked it up, but I am surprised they didn't look at it. But it was a bit of a hinge moment in that football game. That and then the missed field goal on the following drive for Nebraska, where you're able to get them off the field after they take over inside their own 10-yard line. Get them off the field. You have great starting field position. Can't do much with it, but you have another chance at a field goal. It's the two moments that can change the game. You should have been playing with the lead. Whether you go for the field goal early or whether you knock it home with Cunanan on the next drive, you should have been playing with lead and you never led yesterday. And you do wonder how that changes Michigan's mentality in that football game if they are playing from behind.
The bigger discussion point, and you guys are right, the hindsight of taking the lead, that's not being chicken, that's not believing in your guys. It's taking points in a coin flip ball game. But the elephant is about the elephants, right? It's the offensive line. And I'm interested to see what this loss becomes for Nebraska. Are they what they are at tackle? Are they going to stop being stubborn and they're going to give their tackles some help against other teams that have werewolves coming off the edge on second down or first down or whenever you drop back to throw? And can you be better at running the football? Michigan did yesterday, and I think Nebraska fans, despite the loss, can give some credit and do. Because how did Michigan win? They won the way Nebraska, when Nebraska was great, they won the way that Nebraska used to, and that was going and killing the opposing quarterback, being incredible against the run, and then having explosive run plays, but also when push came to shove, having a dominant offensive line to go slam the door. And that's 10 plays, 80 yards, 9 minutes a clock, where Michigan had their home run bat out yesterday with 3 big-time run plays. But when they had to have it on third and forever, 3 times their last drive, they got big-time runs. There was missed tackles, and they got the field goal to seal it. So can Nebraska get better, or are they who they are? You think you'll get better as a team, sure, but they're going to have this situation on the schedule again, maybe as soon as Michigan State.
And you bring up a great point here, because we do need to talk about the 7 sacks where you lose 50 yards. Absolute killers, each and every single one of them. Was the offensive line good? Were the tackles good yesterday, keeping Dylan Ryland safe? No, absolutely not. But as Schmidt said, when are you going to make the adjustment and get 4 hands on the defensive ends with 2 from the tackle and 2 from a chip from either your running back or your tight end? How many times are the running backs and tight ends flying out to the flat as a check down and not even touching the defensive end? At what point do you make that adjustment and say, you know what, these offensive tackles need some help? Also, at what point does your quarterback say, man, I've been sacked 4 times here and I've lost tons of yardage. Maybe I need to speed up my internal clock just a little bit. And if my read's not there, I'm going to get rid of this thing. I'm going to airmail it over a receiver's head on the sideline and live to fight another down. Because you're averaging 7 yards a loss per sack. Can't have that. At some point, there needs to be an adjustment, whether it be from your play caller, getting the offensive tackle some help, or from your quarterback saying, I don't have all day to throw back here. As I go back and look at the sacks, I had 3.5 of them on the offensive line, just no time for Dylan. I had about 3 of them as, you know what, Dylan either stepped into pressure or didn't get the ball out, knowing that Michigan's defensive line had Nebraska's offensive tackles on skates. Like, there needs to be an adjustment in some regard there, because you knew those offensive tackles were getting killed. Do they need to do better? Yes, but you also need to learn from that as an offense.
Okay, there's a lot to break down here. Let's separate this, because there's 3 parts. There's the offensive tackles, There's the running back, which nice kid. He's a receiver more than a running back, doesn't make people miss. And then there's a quarterback. So let's start with the offensive tackle. All three played poorly. Two played worse than others. And there's nothing you can do in an offense when Michigan rushes 4 and they physically just push you into the backfield. I think Nebraska got thrown off by how physically manhandled they were yesterday. Mm-hmm. They knew it'd be tough, but not to that extent. And it threw them off because then you have a quarterback that doesn't have mobility. But this is not anything new. The problem with Nebraska football with the offensive line is there are way too many guards that go and play tackle. When is Nebraska football going to get tackles that are real tackles? Now, they had a guy on the sidelines yesterday that dwarfs everybody and blocked out the sun and Mpuma, excuse me. But they have a bunch of guards that play tackle, and that can't happen. And then you throw in, this is not a knock on Dylan. This is the reality of Dylan. You can't have non-athletic tackles and not have a mobile quarterback. Yeah. Okay? That is a bad combination. You know what? Any school teacher will tell you that math doesn't add up. And so when you play a team like Michigan that physically just overpowers you, and by the way, has Barham, number one, who not many people do. Nebraska doesn't have that guy on his roster. But when they were just getting home with 3- and 4-man pressure, that was startling. But they don't have athletic offensive tackles. And then you throw in, they're getting pushed 4 yards back into the quarterback. And then you have a quarterback that he has that internal clock that isn't there. He doesn't want to throw the ball away. He also has a tendency not to step up into the pocket or to back up into the blocking scheme, which is just something that he's got to continue to work on. When he was under pressure yesterday, it was 3.55 seconds he was getting the ball out. When the pocket was clean, and guys, when it was clean, Nebraska looked pretty good because it was the quick game, and bam, the ball was out. It was 2.34 seconds, which is down from his average of 2.7. So those combinations yesterday were just asking for a world of hurt. Elijah, you asked for some help. Who's going to help you? Because then you're taking a good offensive player away from the formation, and usually that's Lindenmeyer. Harburg can't run block. He can't be on the field in those situations. Corcoran can be out there, but at the end of the day, 2 guys who are on scholarship at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln can't get their ass beaten like that, just being pushed back on one-on-one. Nebraska got beat by not making simple plays of football one-on-one, blocking and tackling. Mm-hmm. You know, you can help, yes, and at times they did, but you also don't have a Dowdell in the backfield to blow somebody up. Emmett's not a blocking running back. That was Ramir's job. It's just when you play a team like Michigan, a lot of these things come to the forefront and you go, we miss Dowdell, we miss Ramir, we miss Ty, we miss Nash. Well, sometimes guys got to do their job, okay? Mm-hmm. Got to do their jobs more consistently, and when it's time to make plays that matter most, they make those plays. Michigan might not be vintage Michigan, but boy, yesterday when plays mattered, they made them.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you 100%, Gary. I guess the point with getting some help is I watched a guy in Von Miller, one of the best edge rushers to ever do it in the NFL for years and years in Denver. Yeah. And there was not many offensive tackles in the NFL over the course of about a decade that could handle him and what he brought from the outside. And the good teams realized that, hey, if we don't take care of this guy, it's going to be a long day for us. And you would always see either a tight end putting his shoulder into him on the line of scrimmage and sneaking out to the flat, or a running back putting a shoulder into him or on the line of scrimmage on his way out to the flat. And you didn't see that much. I guess that's the kind of help I'm looking for, is just to slow a guy down. Hey, give your offensive tackle a chance. Get a shoulder into that defensive end on the way out to the flat as the check down option. It's a little thing where you go, they did it a couple times yesterday, but you're wondering why you don't do it more with as much hassle as those ends were causing you all day yesterday.
What do you think of the game plan, fellas, offensively? You put up 27 points. You had some explosive plays. The pressure rate was very real for Michigan. The run game was not great after that first drive. And could you have got, this is armchair quarterback here, could you have gone more quick game? Because man, they were dialed. They were looking good that first drive. And then you get inside the 10, and boom, it doesn't happen for you. I think it's encouraging with some of the plays because there were 7 sacks. Yes, there's about 3 or 4 more plays that Dylan did make where he evaded some rush, hung in, made a hell of a throw under pressure. He had the interception as well. So what'd you think? Could you have done anything differently on offense or not? Were you just what you are offensively and you made a few plays? You found Barney. Key was pretty much neutralized. So was Hunter. You turned to Lindenmeyer. You turned to Emmett. And it was just you were stuck in mud offensively. Occasionally Michigan would help you out with a personal foul penalty or you hit a big play. But you weren't able that often to put a consistent drive together. You were dormant a lot of the second half against a really good defense.
Look, I said this last night on the reaction show. Part of the reason why Dane Key and company were held in check is because the defensive line put so much pressure on the quarterback. I'm watching those guys run around, and there were receivers that were open downfield, but he just did not have the time to throw the ball. And then it got into his head that I do need to get it out quicker, and the quicker releases were the shorter passes. But the pressure was not just physically evident, but it was, I think Raiola had it in his mind that it's coming. And I'm not giving myself time to find who might be free downfield. So I didn't think that necessarily Michigan secondary, blanketed coverage over every Nebraska receiver, that those guys weren't open. They were. But Dylan, I think, had in his mind that I can't look that far downfield. I got to get rid of it. He only had 11 incompletions. But look, the other thing about this is Nebraska does not have the threat of a quarterback that is willing to run or can run effectively. And as a result, that defensive line can put as much pressure on him as they want because he's not going to be elusive and get away. Yeah. The one thing he doesn't do that Mahomes does is, he does everything else, apparently, because CBS even featured it again yesterday. My God, okay, it's a dead story. But there is the possibility that his idol is going to take off and get you 8 to 15 yards and is going to get that first down. There's nobody that thinks that that's going to happen when they take on Nebraska. So just put as much pressure on him as you can. Yes, he can deliver it quickly if he has to. He finds open receivers 6-7 yards down the field, but he's not going to look 60 yards down the field, and he sure isn't going to run if he doesn't have to. Which in college, I've said over and over every week, you got to have not necessarily a dual threat, but at least the threat that there is going to be the quarterback might break containment and will run and pick up some key yardage. And that's just not evident, especially yesterday.
So a couple of things here. I think a big total is 286 to 43. That's the rushing yards. Probably in this game, the Hail Mary at the end of the first half clouded a lot of things over.
Yeah.
Because it was 17-17.
It's a good chaser, wasn't it?
I thought Nebraska offensively wasn't very good again in the second half, and that's a concern. But here's also something else that happened yesterday, and Dylan was pressured on 24 of his 49 dropbacks. So he gets sacked 7 times. I would say there's probably 2.5 sacks in there that were definitely Dylan's fault. But I worry about Dylan getting killed, but also he starts seeing ghosts if those guys can't block one-on-one on the outside, because you start thinking about it. But Nebraska failed yesterday to play complementary football in the second half, guys. Remember how that second half started? Nebraska defensively holds Michigan in midfield.
3 and out.
And then what happens? Barney out of nowhere.
Yep.
What the hell?
In the 5.
And then that changed the game a little bit, because then field position came into play. Michigan gets a field goal. There's another part of the second half where Nebraska didn't play complementary football when a guy would make a play but they wouldn't help a brother out. They wouldn't subscribe to HBO. This is a discussion that I've not seen a lot of this, but this is a huge moment in this game. Dylan makes a great play to get away from pressure. All right. The pitter-patter feet, they make a move. He gets outside, buys some time. The back of the end zone where Hunter ran out of the end zone.
Yeah.
Dylan makes a great play.
Yeah.
And the situational awareness, and I don't know if it's the peripheral vision of I think I'm still running in the red, but the way the end zones are, the red where Hunter was out of bounds because it goes red, white, red.
Yeah.
I wonder if that'll be changed before we see Michigan State. Like Nebraska would make a play and they couldn't help somebody out, or it didn't lead to another play. It was just, that's why I keep going back. It was such an uneven game that was there for the taking, or you could have taken an ass beating. Well, it was just a weird game yesterday, guys.
There was one more part of this, Gary, with the complimentary football. I don't think you brought it up, which was after Nebraska has to settle for the field goal because of the Isaiah Hunter thing, which people talked about this offseason saying, man, I don't like the fact that the borders of the end zone are the same color as the end zone. And it's only your third home game where that rears its ugly head. You wonder, is it too late to change that? Because that's a game-changing play right there. The fact that you have to put up 3 instead of 7. Mm-hmm. But after that, Nebraska's down by 7 points. They kick off to Michigan. Nebraska gets a 3 and out, just 51 seconds off the clock.
Was that the pass series
for Michigan?
Michigan came out throwing the ball. Yeah.
Yep. 3 straight incompletions. 3 straight passes, 2 incompletions. They punt it back to Nebraska, and then Nebraska goes 3 and out. A third down sack on Dylan Raiola, and then you punt it back to Michigan, and they go, 15 plays, 9 minutes off the clock, which you had about 3 opportunities to get off the field, and you couldn't do it. That was when Schmidt and I were walking back over to Salt Mine City Brewing, and it was 3rd and 11, they pick it up. 3rd and 4, they pick it up, missed tackle. You had plenty of opportunities to get off the field as a defense there, and you couldn't do it on 3rd down. And that comes down to Michigan. Their lines of scrimmage had worn on Nebraska at that point. When you have 3rd and 10, and it's a handoff on the inside, you got to get the ball back to your offense. And Nebraska couldn't do it right there.
There were too many opportunities on that drive, Elijah. You're spot on, where you just make a tackle, you get the football back with plenty more time, and you miss the tackles. Yeah. You had chances. I mean, you had a defender or 2 there, and Michigan ran it. They were just trying to burn clock. They weren't going to throw it anymore. And, one of the comments in the stream chat, and thanks to all of you for joining us here on Sunday Live with the Average Joe Sports Show. Biff knew that his lines of scrimmage were going to rule the day. And he said as much at halftime, it sounds like, in his post game. So there's that little piece to take with you, where the opposing coach knows that he's got the fellows up front on both sides of the line to not really stress too much. And it worked out. But no, I'm really interested to see, what do you do with this, guys? What do you do with this loss if you're Nebraska?
Well, I'm looking back to a couple of things real quick. Yeah. Look, I saw the Biff Poggi comments, and he was right. So we're all in Nebraska. We're big into what's being said in the locker rooms at halftime and after games. They don't respect you. You're worried that Akron doesn't respect you. Michigan clearly did not respect you. And even when he said at 17-all, we're physically beating you, that ought to be in the Husker. I don't know who it's named after anymore, but it ought to be in the strength complex. They are physically beating you. When Nebraska lost to Florida State in that Orange Bowl prior to going on the 60-3 run and winning 3 national titles, the 15 score was on the scoreboard with 1:02 as a reminder that you didn't get the job done in that Orange Bowl game. And it was a reminder all summer long that you didn't get it done. And you lost 18-16 in a game that you should have won and would have won a national title. That was a reminder. If a coach is coming into Nebraska and saying, guys, we're just physically beating them up, that ought to be a reminder to Nebraska that they knew coming in here that they didn't respect you, and they are physically beating you. That should not be something that is, well, yeah, he's right. That ought to affect you if you are a Nebraska football player, because if Akron doesn't, well, and Michigan comes in, hey, guys, don't worry about it. I also thought that drive in the fourth quarter, that even though Michigan was 1 for 7 on 3rd downs through the first 3 quarters, that they knew that they could do that. Like they were just waiting to play that 8-minute drive card at the right time. And when they took the field and went on that march, and yeah, they had some third down and longs, and Nebraska could have made stomps, but it just seemed to me like when they got the ball in that moment, they knew that they could do exactly what they did. They didn't get the touchdown, but they knew that they could march down the field on Nebraska, and they did. And they just waited till the fourth quarter to exert their will on Nebraska's defense. So, and one other thing, Gary was mentioning the unevenness of the game. The Barney punt return that pinned Nebraska inside the 5. Yeah, that was a bad play. But remember, prior to that, he had that one punt return where the ball bounced, and he picked it up and he got 20 yards. And then it ends up with him getting the touchdown on the end of the drive. That, to me, is kind of a microcosm of how uneven, as Gary was saying, the game was. If he doesn't field the punt and get 20 yards and give Nebraska field position, that may not end up with a touchdown. But then he goes and he fields one inside the 5, and that changes the game late. That's the unevenness right there.
He also had a punt return where it could have gone for big yardage.
Yes.
And I don't know if it was the turf monster or the fingertip of a defender, but if he gets around the edge,
he's still running.
Yep. I mean, but you create your own breaks, you capitalize on your own opportunities. And, kudos, a lot of people in the stream are talking about the bad run fits, and Buford had a bad day and he got benched after one. Who I came away really, really impressed by yesterday? 2 guys on Michigan's team. Barham is a dude. Moving him from linebacker to edge, smart move. But man, Justice Haynes. Justice Haynes is somebody who almost everybody in the country would love to have, because he did something that the Nebraska running backs haven't done for ages, and that's get skinny in a hole and then get big and hit the X button. So the long touchdown run in the second half, it's a horrible run fit by Nebraska safeties. If you're going to play quarters, you're trusting your safeties in the run game to be able to make stops and to play smartly if you're going to play that way. So they chose to play that way, and their safeties let them down. And I wonder if we see, a tweak here or two at safety in the bye week. Do we see more of a Caleb Benning? What do they do? Rex Guthrie played 30 snaps.
And Guthrie didn't look great either yesterday.
No, and his run fits were bad, but I think if you're going to play him, you got to play him and let him learn through mistakes. But Haynes gets skinny in the hole. There's a bad run fit, and then boom, he's gone. I mean, him and Barham are 2 guys that I was really impressed by yesterday. And also in this game of being uneven, the poor clock management. Just I don't know. There's a lot of frustrating things. I don't think it's and Schmidt, you were leading in this question. Where do you go from here? I think where you go from here is you get your ass back to work, and it's an important week upcoming, and you figure out what you can do to help everybody and help everybody get better and not mope around, and the season's not over. Okay? I don't think they'll mope.
I don't think they'll mope. I think
no, I hope not. And I hope nobody says, well, we almost came close. If I was a competitor and I was on that team, I'd be pissed at my individual performance.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'd be pissed that we had an opportunity to prove people and to say, hey, this is working. And we missed out, and we're not going to have another one of those opportunities probably for another month. But you know what? You got a pretty important month of October where people are going, well, you'll probably go 4-0. Well, are you going to be 7-1 when you wake up to play USC on the 1st of November? So I don't think the season is over. I just think there's probably things that we all talked about prior to 2:30 yesterday are the same and aren't going to be fixed until the offseason. So then it comes on to the headsets of what can they do to help guys get better in season, and what can they do to hide some of those weaknesses? Because there are certain parts of this team that are good. There's just not enough. And where there need to be good in Big Ten football in the trenches, that's still a work in progress.
I don't know that it'll be interesting to see if they get to that point with USC, if they can be 7-1 going into November. Just looking at their schedule, looking at some of the results, and you just don't know who's going to show up on Saturday. I'd like to know, and maybe we'll know tomorrow, how much live work Nebraska did this week, last week with their Michigan prep. And I ask that from a tackling standpoint. Maybe it's just Michigan, and I also ask that with just how did you prep? I mean, I think you had an idea. I don't doubt that everything was combed over, but how much readiness did you have with the tackling part? And you got to be careful with it. Clearly, you don't want to beat the hell out of your team going into Michigan, but sometimes you need to be physical and smack one another around with live tackling to get you ready for who you're facing. So,
well, look,
I'm interested in that.
Nebraska's sparring partners before the championship fight, Akron and Houston Christian. How much did you learn about it? I mean, those were two gimmies, and Nebraska did what they were supposed to do in those games. It wasn't 38-21 against Akron and 28-10 against Houston Christian. They beat them the way they should have beaten them. But were those really good tests leading up to the Michigan game? I don't know. But they beat who was on their schedule, and they did it the way they were supposed to do it. So good on them. But were they really good tests to get you prepared for your Big Ten opener? Look, I don't. Okay, maybe he should not be named. But there's a team in Orlando that right now is 3-0, and they're kind of gloating about it. Well, a couple of your wins are against Jacksonville State and North Carolina A&T, and you beat a hapless North Carolina team. Do you really know how good you are at this point? So my point being, does Nebraska really know how good it is after your sparring partners were Akron and Houston Christian? And now you went into the fight, and you got rocked, and you got punched. You didn't get knocked out. Nebraska did fight.
You're
2
missing
years ago,
teeth,
they
though.
got knocked out. 2 years ago, they got knocked out against Michigan. And, it was like watching Larry Holmes beat up Tex Cobb for 15 rounds. Still lasted, but it wasn't even close. Nebraska was not prepared to fight a team in the upper echelon of the Big Ten. I still think Nebraska is in the upper half of the Big Ten, but there's a difference, especially along the lines of scrimmage, as to how well you are prepared to fight.
So I think this is a conversation that adds to this and maybe adds some clarification. Do you guys think Nebraska was beat by sheer talent yesterday or sheer schematicism, which is a word I just made up?
I think scheme, some of Michigan.
No. You can only choose one.
Oh,
was Nebraska beat by talent yesterday because they looked across the sidelines and that team had better talent, or were they beaten because they were schemed into the ground?
No, it was talent. Talent kicked the hell out of them.
Does that change? Does that change then how you look at yesterday and moving forward? Because isn't the discussion about talent the same we've been having? I just told you that I think Nebraska has way too many guards that have to play tackle in the last 4 or 5 years at Nebraska. And you had to replace 2 guys up front. And so we are already wondering, okay, how quickly is that talent or those bodies on the defensive line are going to have to get better than sooner? There's also the bottom line, guys. Some Nebraska guys yesterday that you rely on that have played in these games before. Yeah, they haven't won because Nebraska's lost 28 straight against ranked teams. They didn't play as well as they could play. I think we probably have to have a Riley Van Poppel discussion, and it's not going to be comfortable because we thought that would be a comfortable spot for 5. Well, there's something wrong, guys. There's something wrong with RVP because he doesn't look anywhere close to what he's looked like in the past. And that's a problem because you didn't expect that to be a problem. But I think more than anything, it was talent yesterday. The way your roster is built, the way your roster is developed, and how long you've been doing it.
Well, do we have to have a conversation about the fact that your defensive line coach, which is one of the more important position groups in Big Ten football, it's his first time ever coaching the defensive line by himself at any level? Is that a conversation you'd have? Because there are guys, Riley Van Poppel's one that even last year, I know he redshirted, but he played in 4 games. He looked like a mini Ty Robinson that with a little more development could reach that same level. He looks far from that this year. Keona Davis, where was he yesterday? Did he play? Don't remember calling his name once.
He did play.
Don't remember calling his name once. Most of that defensive line It's you felt all right about it. Do you have to ask questions about the coach at the top leading that group, considering he has never done this before?
Well, let me throw in this, Elijah, and I think you brought this up a while ago, and I think you might have alluded to it on a preseason show. We can recite in our sleep 3-3-5, 3-3-5.
Mm-hmm.
Would Nebraska be better with their current assortment of players in a 4-3 or a 4-2-5?
Yes, hell yes. You need more help in the middle of that defense.
Give Chris a moment to think about it.
No, you do. I mean, you need more beef up front and make the offensive line at least figure out some guy to double team so someone else can eat. And you have guys on the line of scrimmage in Lenhart and Riley Van Poppel that have been on campus for a lot of years. They need to go take over or at least make the opposing offensive line have a problem, both of them, okay? And they're not playing at the level right now to where their recruiting stars are supposed to be. And they've been on campus a long time. I think you're 1,000% right, Elijah, about this transition, because whatever you think of pot roast, that guy got his defensive line to play and play well. Sorry to go history, back in history on that. But right now, it doesn't look like he upgraded or broke even with the defensive line.
And Kobe's asking, am I already asking for
we're not asking for pink slips. We're just asking.
I'm asking
performance.
I'm asking about the hire in the first place. Whenever you look at the position coaches and coordinators on your team, he's the only one. I mean, and Matt Rule talked every show about developing coaches. Matt Rule does not have a developmental coaching staff right now. He's got a lot of guys with a lot of experience everywhere, except one spot, defensive line.
Well, I think, it's probably not the most ideal first-year coach to come in with what he has, because how many of those guys on defensive line are 40-snap game guys that you could rely on? The other thing that Nebraska misses from last year, and it has been few and far between, is they don't have that nose tackle that eats up space, that is a wrecker, that people have to pay attention to. And when you don't have that, you just get abused. I think this was a concern we've had from spring to summer to now. It's not going to change. It's just, you look at their personnel, they're asking guys to do more than they've ever done. Elijah Judy's a nice kid. All right. Nice guy. I should say guy, family, but Elijah Judy to me is a good 15 to 20 snap guy. And he'll give you everything for those 15 to 20. But man, when we start stretching it a little bit, then we start worrying about it. And, it's just, I think that's a work in progress, where Michigan hit them week 4 on the schedule, and they got a dose of reality. Physically, they're not matched up against an offensive line that usually wins Joe Moore awards. And they just, they're a little lighter in the shorts than they've been in the past. It's just, what do you do now against the next Big Ten offensive line that's going to try and exploit you? Do you scheme it up, or do you say, guys, you just got to get better? That's where they're at. And here's the thing. There's also the recruiting bit. I'm intrigued by Tyson Terry. I'm intrigued by Malcolm Simpson. He's one of those guys that would sit on the nose in his career at Nebraska and be like, yep, that's what a nose tackle looks like. They miss that. And they definitely miss it with this group, because then it's a trickle-down effect. Then it helps the linebackers, who sometimes get washed out if they're not named Vincent Shavers. It is amazing that the defensive backs have played this well without Nebraska having a consistent pass rush.
Another thing, Nebraska didn't, well, I shouldn't say Nebraska. Bryce Underwood wasn't a big factor in the game. I know he had 60 yards rushing, and he did have the touchdown run, and that was 20-some yards. I don't remember the exact number, but he wasn't a huge factor. He wasn't the X factor in this game. It was just, hat on football and them getting big plays in the run game. But Underwood wasn't the biggest, he was the big concern going into the game. How's Nebraska going to contain him? He was 12 of 22 passing. He was I thought he was pedestrian, but he ran when he had the opportunity. He ran the ball when he had the opportunity.
It's not effective.
He was willing to run. when the play presented itself that he could do so and get you 15 yards. So, getting back to the schematics of the game, if it was schematics, then Nebraska would have had a game plan to stop Bryce Underwood. Michigan didn't have to have him win the game for them. It was everybody else. So that's where I go to the talent in the line play. Something about the defensive line, I think I mentioned it before. The way that defensive line was coached the last couple of years was very different than it is now. It is much more of a technical workshop, laboratory, the way things are coached with that team. Terry Braden brings in a completely different mentality than Terrence Knighton, who was, okay, we're going to have a meeting today. We're not going to be here very long. Okay, the guy with the ball, just go tackle him. Meeting adjourned. Play harder than the guy on the other side of the ball. Okay, Tuesday meetings are over. Out-muscle that guy. Wednesday meetings are over. That was it. It was really simplified. But now they've gone into this professional football lab, which is where Terry Braden comes from. I'm not saying either one is right or wrong, but that defensive line is having to go to, graduate level classes when, that was not what the case was. And also Nebraska's missing a couple guys of NFL caliber in Robinson and Hutmaker. They haven't. You don't have
the body personnel like you did last year, and again, to armchair quarterback this, do you, in hindsight, put an extra defensive lineman down if you're Nebraska and just say, all right, rookie, go beat us? Do you believe that Underwood making him throw 30 times would have been successful against Nebraska? Because Michigan lined up and ran it when they wanted to. And Nebraska knew it was coming and couldn't stop it.
I felt like there were times Michigan threw the ball because they felt
got
like
bored.
They had to. Well, yeah, I was like, we probably got to better mix in a pass or something right now. And so they throw a pass 3 yard out or something. It just seemed like, we should do this to check out the box, but then let's just continue to run the ball.
Think about how much worse yesterday would be if Michigan had wide receivers that could actually catch the football.
Oh yeah. Well, they don't have the double pass drop. They don't have then right after that a drop. Their wide receivers aren't very good.
No.
Roman Wilson isn't walking through that door. There were times where Michigan wide receivers yesterday were running routes that I know were not on the route tree. I mean, they were like hip to hip running down the field. There's also, guys, it comes back to, I know we talk a lot about this game because of the frustration, and it was there, is sometimes it's just simple. It's football 101. It's blocking and tackling and making plays when there is a play to be made. Going back to that drive, that fourth quarter drive that was so Big Ten identity. Michigan has an identity. Indiana has an identity. Mm-hmm. Nebraska has yet to establish an identity from Saturday to Saturday. That drive started at 12:40 on the clock. The drive ended when there was 3 minutes and 46 seconds left on the clock. They converted, as we talked a little bit earlier, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. All three of those were plays to be made. Actually, the 3rd and 5, Nebraska did a great job. Remember, they blew up the play on the sideline? All Sierra Wright had to do was just push the guy out of bounds, and he got the first down. Then McCullough was there to make a play. Didn't make a play. It's just sometimes it's simple, and it's you gotta make a play. They didn't make a play yesterday when they had a chance to get off the field and make a play, and especially that demoralizing fourth quarter drive where the old men were beating the hell out of the young men that were in front of them on the line of scrimmage.
The old death march where they just snap it and run it down.
Well, isn't that Big Ten football?
That is. You got to be able to do it. You got to be able to stop it, and you got to be able to do it.
And the ultimate killer, 3rd and 10 at Nebraska's 39-yard line. It was a 19-yard run by Haynes, which got Michigan into better field position for a field goal. 39 that would have been a 56-yard kick, which their kicker already nailed one that would have been good from 70. So maybe they do attempt that. But I think you as a defense have to know they're a couple yards away from field goal range here. A field goal puts them up by 2 scores. With what they've been doing all half long, they're probably going to run the football here, give themselves a chance at a field goal. It didn't look like Nebraska was ready for the run at all. 19 yards later, they're at the Nebraska 20-yard line. and it feels like the game is completely different. That was the ultimate killer. Of those third downs, yeah, you'd like Sierra Wright to make a play and get him out of bounds, but you still have more opportunities. 3rd and 10 from your 39-yard line, a chance to get him off the field, and he's a great back. Don't get me wrong, but that's the play that needs to be made. You got to get him off the field right there and force him into a long field goal attempt. And you should know going into that play with what Michigan's identity is, that's going to be a run all day. They're going to try to run the clock, and they're going to try to give their field goal kicker a better chance. But the 19 yards later, and the game's, I shouldn't say it's over, but it felt pretty over at that point.
That's Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, Sunday Live, Average Joe Sports Show. We're with you 7 days a week. Like and subscribe on YouTube. You can find us there. Tell a friend about us on Twitter, AJ Sports Radio, AJ Sports Pod. And we've got ad questions here. Mike is asking about the ad, or maybe not. I don't know. I need glasses. Still working on that. But Nebraska, listen, Michigan has some dudes for sure off the edge from a pass rush standpoint. They got the Bama transfer at running back with Haynes' money.
But you know what? Hey, Schmidt, can I stop you real quick?
Yeah, sure.
You know, the thing that is also frustrating, and granted, well, I'm not going to say granted. It's not like Michigan did anything special yesterday. They got pressure with 3 and 4 man. One time there were times they did. I'll give Wink Martindale credit. There were a couple of times where he threw some stuff. And from what there was a guy from Michigan I was talking to before the game, and he said some of the Martindale coverages, the disguises, the defensive backs struggle with. So he said sometimes there'll be a bust because they're not on the same page. He said, but Martindale, he goes, you watch, he'll try and cloud Dylan on a few plays. And he did. There was, sometimes they'd put 5 on the line of scrimmage and then the ends would drop into coverage. Yeah. But God, I just keep going back to, if I'm on that offensive line and I'm waking up this morning, I'm like, Jesus, I got beat by 3-man pressure. I got beat by 4-man pressure. It wasn't like they were running stunts. They just lined up and said, let's play ball, y'all.
Yeah, they kept it simple, and they didn't have to get too intricate, and they have difference makers, at least on yesterday, on second down, on first down. However, if you took any time at all to drop back, you were a dead man on too many occasions. You had no help in the run game. And then you flip it around. Michigan could have gone Zach Wiegert and told you where the play was going to go. And Michigan was firing off and paving the way to the point where there was no danger at all for a freshman in his second road start to have to go win it for you or even go make a play or two enough for you. And that's the frustrating part.
That's why I think it was important, Schmitty, and you and I talked about this, to play with a lead. To force Michigan to play from behind where they're maybe going to have to throw the football more than they want to.
Especially that opening drive schematically was as creative as we've seen Nebraska's offense be. And Dylan made a great improvised throw to Lindenmeyer. I think it's one of the best throws I've seen him make since his time at Nebraska. But when Nebraska got to the 5, you could sense amongst that crowd of 87,000, like, they're too close to the goal line. Can you please score from the 5? Can you please score from the 3? You could just get that sense of people going, not this again. And then when they didn't make it on 4th down, there was the here we go again. You just could sense that. And crowd did everything it could yesterday to maintain and beat a fever pitch. The 8-9 minute drive in the 4th quarter, those were body blows, gut punches, and people really resigned to here we go again. But that opening drive was so good. People had trepidation when they got to the 5-yard line that they got to be able to score from here, and they didn't. And then it was here we go again. And in that moment, it became uphill. It's still scoreless, but Nebraska played uphill the rest of the day.
They were able to go RPO and move him a little bit, and he got into some rhythm and made some really good throws. But it's a mobility thing with him. And then it's also a mobility thing with the tackles that you touched on, Sharpie. Guys, I want to we'll wind it down. Go ahead.
Was it 4 red zone trips and only 13 points? Is that right?
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
You had 2 field goals and
1 touchdown to Harburg at the end.
Yeah. And that looked easy. Where the hell is that play, or at least the execution part of it?
Michigan is pretty soft on that drive in terms of
they just burn clock. We'll give you yards, and that's fair.
They're trying to keep things in front.
They're up by 10. No, I get it.
Yeah.
But what's no threat inside the 10, the 5 is a keeper.
Well,
I know he scored
touchdowns.
I'm not calling for a change. I am not calling for a change, but the backup quarterback has, I think, 2, if not 3, rushing touchdown this season from inside the 10-yard line. And because there is that threat, the play is he can string a play out with his legs. He can elude pressure. And if he sees a gap, he sees a seam, he's heading for the end zone. He took a pop against, what was it, Akron or Houston Christian. But there is at least the threat that the guy with the ball might run and could score if he sees just enough open daylight to get in there. That doesn't happen with everybody at that position.
Well, I hope you guys did not watch Miami, Florida last night, because or if you've watched Kentucky play. Again, Emmett's a good number 1. Emmett is not going to make people miss. Emmett had a couple of times yesterday where the hole was there and you're like, okay, he's going to get through it. And then it's going to be 9-11. And it was only 4 to 5 yards. And I think Emmett's a better receiver than he is a blocker. But in Nebraska's current situation in running back, Emmett has to play a lot. And God bless Emmett, because he takes a beating. Man, I don't know if you're going to be able to get him through 12 games. But the second half, only 5 carries, 10 yards. I'm watching Miami last night. Marty Brown is on the field in crucial moments to keep the clock moving and to get 4 or 5 yards. Dowdell was that guy. Nebraska doesn't have that guy in the red zone. When you've got 3 plays if you think to make 3 yards after Barney gets 7 on the first snap. That's bang into the line of scrimmage. I don't care if that offensive line sucks. You would think a running back at least would move the pile forward a yard or 2 and then do it again. And then all of a sudden you're looking at 1st and goal at the 4. I don't think that the issue at running back's not going to go away. I mean, guys, guess who didn't play yesterday at running back?
Your big back.
And Nelson was in on the first series. What are we doing here?
Well, there's zero trust for him. The guy doesn't see the hole, doesn't hit the hole, and I don't think the speed is there. I mean, we saw that last week, and this is, he ran for 85 yards, but the guy isn't a college running back right now that you can put in against Michigan. He might look okay against Houston Christian. You have a couple of backs that are young, and then you have other guys that you're waiting on. Nelson had an okay run, but he didn't help spell the situation or make the run game better. And I know he's young. And then there's Emmett there's some limitations with Emmett, talented ball player. He's best you got. But what have you been doing? We were talking about what have you been doing at offensive tackle in the recruiting world the last few years? What are you doing at the running back spot the last few years?
Well, and I think that goes back to the development in that room is not very good.
No.
And that's not again, a lot of the stuff we're talking about today, guys, is not new. It just gets magnified a little bit more when you play a team like Michigan and they remind you where Michigan in 2025 is to where Nebraska is trying to find some traction in 2025. That running back room, the development has not been good. The recruiting has not been good. They got, I don't know if Parker ever played down at Nebraska, and he was your big pickup in the offseason. He might be in the doghouse so far that the doghouse has walked away and he's still laying on the ground, thinking the doghouse is over top of him. And so you're left with Emmett, and Emmett's got to do everything in his power. It's Emmett. Again, I think Emmett has got some big balls on him because he takes some hits and he gets up and he's tough. But is Emmett ever going to take the ball and hit his head on the goalpost like Haynes yesterday and run away from people? I'm telling you, you watch. Buford had a bad run fit and then tried to make up for it. He wasn't catching Haynes. It just, there's just, again, I keep going back to this because I've said this on my show and I've said it here. There's more to discuss if Nebraska wins. I think there's less to discuss if Nebraska loses like they did yesterday, because the things that we are worried about Nebraska kind of are still there yesterday, right? Was there anything for you guys that popped up that you went, uh-oh, put that on the chart we're going to have to talk about for 2 weeks?
That we haven't already been talking about?
Everything. I mean, we've addressed it all, and it ain't going away.
I mean, the one thing that
you overcome it with what's on your schedule is a question.
I was not expecting the pass protection to be as bad as it was. That's the one thing I'll add to the board that I was not talking about. I mean, Michigan, they've struggled this season to get pressure with 4. And I thought Nebraska was, as an offensive line, a better pass protecting offensive line than run blocking offensive line. Didn't look like it yesterday.
Hey, Archie's pretty good.
Yeah, he's been fun.
Yeah, they got a weapon now. They got a guy who, again, when you have to win in the margins in close games, he's an absolute weapon for you. I mean, thank God, by the way, that he is as advertised.
Yeah. There's a couple where Nebraska goes 3 and out on their own half of the field, and he does a great job at least giving your defense some space.
He averaged 49 yards a punt and, protected field position when he had to. So, look, Kunana missed a field goal, but I thought Nebraska's special teams were pretty good, other than the punt at the to the 2-yard line. But look, Barney, who's another one. Emmett gets rocked pretty good every game. So does Barney, and he gets up and he continues to go. And I wish he hadn't fielded that ball at the 2-yard line, but Nebraska's not even close to in that game if he's not in there. So good on him. Before we say goodbye, I did want to mention, I think Steven put it in the stream. How about being Wisconsin? Wisconsin is 2-2 now, and they have Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, Michigan, Indiana, and somebody
Illinois.
else. Illinois. And then they end the season with Minnesota on the road. Look, we're in an era when college football coaches are getting whacked in the middle of the season, as did Virginia Tech and UCLA. I'm not saying they're going to fire Luke Fickell, but they're 2-2 right now, and they pissed somebody off. They got a Nebraska-like schedule from the Big Ten. I'm not sure they win 1 or 2 more games the rest of the year. And then what does Wisconsin do? Because we're talking about Nebraska's identity in the Big Ten, and I think Nebraska looks like it's more than a serviceable Big 12 team. You talk about a program that has completely lost its identity, and it is Wisconsin. I mean, the offensive line, and they don't look anything like what Barry Alvarez, Paul Christ, Brett Bielema had.
That's why you have a bad schedule.
I'm sorry to go off on a tangent here, a little different from the Nebraska Michigan game, but holy cow!
Bill, I'm with you. Sorry, Elijah. They didn't look prepared at the beginning of that game yesterday, which is more an indictment than anything when you're coming off Alabama and you're at home to begin the Big Ten.
Yeah, I predicted preseason both on this show and then our friends the Big Red Junkies. We do a schedule preview and talk about some teams. I picked them preseason to go 3-9, and I'm feeling now like I might be generous with that 3-9. Is there a win left on their schedule?
Nope.
That's an awful schedule. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Like the one chance, maybe Iowa or Washington looks good. Illinois dropped a stinker last night, but I think they're better than what they showed. That is another thing that I do want to hit today.
Hold on.
Nettie is just
hold on. Time out. A stinker? They got their ass kicked.
Yeah.
Okay. You might go into your bathroom today, Elijah, and it might stink in there. But their stink broke the porcelain.
The performance from Indiana was impressive. We'll say that. I do think that changes my perspective on the entire Matt Rule rebuild at Nebraska, just to see what Signetti has done at frickin' Indiana of all places.
Stop.
But and that's where I was going to go, Gary, was the fact that in 2 years, they got their offensive line and defensive line to a point that they were kicking the ass of a Bielema offensive line and defensive line. That's something.
Can we address a couple of these things here? Because thank you, Elijah. Let's go back to Wisconsin, because the next 2 opponents for Nebraska, Michigan State and then Maryland, which will be the first true road game of the year. Michigan State kind of held their own more than I thought they would last night. Childs is trending in the right direction. But everybody has said, yeah, you know what? I probably won't go out to College Park because that'll be a win. Man, Malik Washington may allow Maryland to be a legit 6-6 team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm impressed by him. So, there's two quarterbacks that you go, okay, maybe they give you hope. But let's talk about Indiana for a moment and Cignetti. The difference between Cignetti and Nebraska's program is Cignetti is won wherever he's at. It doesn't matter who he has. Cignetti's a winner. The guy at Nebraska is currently a 500 coach. Sorry. If you want to compare Cignetti and Rule, Cignetti is a winner. He's been a winner everywhere he has been. It doesn't matter what kind of talent he has. And you know why? Because he's got a blueprint. They have dedicated not only to the portal, and that benefited them greatly, and they've got another really good quarterback, but he said, I know Big Ten football. There are 2 years there. They have brought in and recruited and developed offensive linemen and defensive linemen.
He is, and he has people on his staff, and he's from the Saban tree. He was the recruiting coordinator for Nick Saban for a lot of years before he got exiled to his start. And he's a guy in his early 60s that has done a lot of time, man, at small schools, and then had to climb the ladder slowly once he left the Saban payroll as a recruiting coordinator. He knows how to evaluate talent. They have not missed on their portal gets. They have not missed on their high school kids, and he's found the ones that have fallen through the cracks to go to the James Madisons of the world, which is a nice program, but he built that up. That's what makes him special, is he is really good at finding good ball players and making them better. And then he's pissed off and he takes it out on you on a Saturday because he had to do time with a place that only has one gas station and a Walmart when it comes to where you coaching these days. Well, there's one. Yeah, right. So he is out to go scorched earth on you. Case in point last night, 63-10 on the pig farmer.
Now, do you guys think though that this is an outlier? Like
No.
Cignetti is an outlier compared, and you really can't compare him. And, we all keep waiting for Indiana's mojo to run out. I don't know, 63-10 against a top 10 team last night says that they're hanging around. They play in Iowa City this weekend, but I don't know. We're all going to do this. We're going to do this with Rule. You're going to do this with other programs. Well, if Cignetti can do it, well, sometimes you just have to go, man, Kurt Cignetti's a winner. He's been a winner wherever he's been. You know what? And he knows how to build a program, and good on them. Good on what's happened at Indiana.
The mojo runs out. The mojo runs out if he takes a higher profile job.
Yeah, and also maybe their schedule. They have a more difficult schedule than they had last year, but kudos for them. It makes the Big Ten better.
Yeah,
a school like Indiana can find a way to hire somebody and win football games. Makes the league better. You know what? Stop complaining about it with your program and say, get better. Our current guys get better. We pay you for a reason. All right? Find a way to win football games that matter. Right now, Indiana, outside of Ohio State and Notre Dame last year, in games that have mattered to keep Indiana relevant, they found a way to win those games.
As you look at the league, is Indiana one of your four? USC has looked good. Indiana's looked good.
Washington.
I'm not there on Washington just yet. They have some bigger tests in front of them, so I'm not willing to put them in that list yet. But you also still have Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. It's crowded at the top right now in the Big Ten.
You've got an awesome weekend next week in the Big Ten.
Yeah. It's like football gasm with and we get the weekend off. No, I'm serious. So Nebraska. So thank you, scheduling gods. Thank you, whoever. Nebraska has a bye week. And thank you for all of us that are on Sports Talk. The week 5 college football schedule, fully hussed.
Well, I'm hoping Washington knocks off Ohio State. Washington should be ranked come this week. Indiana's got to go on the road. You got the whiteout with Penn State, Oregon. You've got Bama hosting Georgia. Or maybe it's the other way around. You have Bama at Georgia.
Yes.
And then you have Ole Miss, LSU.
Yeah, and Schmidt, I am with you. Don't overlook that Washington-Ohio State game. because it's in Washington. Washington has the second longest home winning streak in the country. They haven't lost since before they made the national championship game with Penix at home.
You've got two coaches, Signetti and then Fish, right, that have won where they've been. They've just been assistants or part of bigger staffs and big name staffs for a long time in their career. I mean, Fish is a guy that's getting some run for the Florida job if it and when it becomes open. So,
well,
no, the league's loaded, man. It's so loaded, and you get back to where Nebraska's at against Michigan with their interim situation. You wonder what's Michigan's staying power without the Harbaugh effect, and then you have that 3-point ball game. We've come full circle.
I mean, we're going to be watching next Saturday night. You're going to have Penn State, Oregon in Happy Valley, and Alabama, Georgia going on at the same time.
Yeah.
How great is that?
I'll be watching Oregon and Penn State.
Hey,
you multi-screen it.
Here, you guys want a little insight on the Michigan State Nebraska kick, which I saw someone said it's going to be a night game, but it hasn't been official. So I know a couple of guys on the CBS crew, the spotter, David Moulton, a longtime friend of mine from my time in Florida. He hadn't been to a game at Nebraska. He'd never been in person in Nebraska, and he spots for Danielson, and then he spots for Aikman. And he said, Nebraska wins today. We're going to be back here in 2 weeks. And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, because we have Penn State UCLA, and nobody wants that game. CBS was trying to dump that game, and they could justify it if Nebraska beat Michigan, so they would take Nebraska-Michigan State. So Nebraska doesn't win, and it's supposed to be at 3, but I've seen it on FS1 at 6:30.
That'd be a change because I know Nebraska hasn't been planning on that game being in the evening. They were thinking 11 or 2:30.
Well, I know it was originally this is 2:30 or 3.
Yeah.
So now I see it's TBA. You guys want to guess the line for that game?
No, I'd say 3.5 Nebraska. Michigan State looks better than Nebraska does, at least what I saw last night on the lines of scrimmage. And better at running back.
Do you go as far as to say pick 'em?
Yeah, hell yeah, it's a pick 'em. That's what I'd go with right now if I was Mr. Rothstein in Vegas right now.
Aiden Childs is a difference maker. They've got to be. I think they
Michigan
need to worry about
State's
him
physical
more.
and fast.
They need to worry about the quarterback. The quarterback more so against Michigan State than they did against Michigan.
Does Nebraska have a difference maker at quarterback? And I kind of say that tongue in cheek.
If he has time.
Because Dylan is a discussion that we really haven't. Yeah, when he has time. So let me give you some other ones. A clean pocket yesterday where he was getting the ball out at 2.34 seconds, 21 of 25, 206 yards passing, 3 scores. When he was under pressure, he was holding on to the ball, 3.55. He was pressured on 24 of his 49 dropbacks. So clean feet, I think all 4 of us could throw the ball down the field with clean feet. Here's the thing, though, as we transition into the month of October and beyond, do you guys believe that Nebraska will stretch the field vertically? Because their percentage of plays or routes that are run 15 or more yards downfield is very minimal right now through 4 weeks.
I think you have to. You got to at least let the defense know that you can.
Why aren't you, unless you just don't believe that your protection will hold up to allow that type of route to develop? I mean, there's a reason why you're not doing things. There's a reason you're not. Maybe it's philosophy, maybe it's stubbornness, or maybe it's like trust. Maybe you don't believe the offensive line is good enough to run the football inside the 5. So you're throwing a fade route or you're calling pass plays because they're not good run blockers. Maybe that's your thought against certain fronts. Or maybe you don't have a guy downfield, but we've heard Dana talk about Hunter being a guy that can run by people. Yeah. So then what is it? What are you calling? You're calling what your team can do, presumably.
Yeah, I think moving forward, and this isn't just the Michigan State game. This will be like to watch from the next 8 games. But I do believe, and Key only had 1 catch for 5 yards in the second half yesterday. they have to find a way to get Key and Hunter more involved.
Yeah.
And that might also, and that not only just the play that's called, but it also is those two winning battles against man coverage or where they sit in a zone.
No, it'll be good. We'll be
because is Lindenmeyer no, I'm not going to say this. Because I was going to say, who is your second option? Because Barney might not necessarily be your number one option, but he's become pretty reliable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who is Dylan's safety valve? Is it Lindenmeyer?
Mm-hmm. I'd say so.
It was yesterday.
7 catches on 10 targets yesterday.
I thought it was Emmett, but I thought Lindenmeyer did a good job of getting open, and then he did really nice work after the catch. He almost had that. He almost stayed on his feet after the 18-yard gain. I mean, that's really elite balance and athleticism for his size. No, I think Nebraska did some things offensively that they can take with them. They got to figure it out, though, and be more threatening in the run game. They just got to do it. And who knows if they'll be able to. I think they're going to be facing really good lines moving forward. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think in terms of guys, dudes you have in terms of talent, it's one of the more talented teams you've seen at Nebraska dating back to the Bo Pelini years, but it doesn't matter if you're getting killed in the lines of scrimmage. That's what's concerning moving forward. I want to ask the question as we get out here. Does the bye week come at a good time or a bad time? Is it all right to have this one sit on you for a little bit and clean mistakes up? Or is this one of those games you want to get the taste out of your mouth and move on quickly? Is it a good week or a bad week for a bye?
It's
for
good.
Us, it's great. For us, it's great. I love the slate next week, but for the team.
I think for the team, you need to go reassess, because as bad as you got your ass handed to you, you need to talk it over, look at it, and then go back to work. They may not like it, and they may want to be raring to go, which good on them, but they need a week of time out and go back to work. That's what I think.
I think it's good to have a week, the week off. Briola said, no, it sucks. We need to play and get back to work. Well, yeah, sit with it a little while and figure out where things went right, where things went wrong, and understand that you're probably going to learn more about you after yesterday than you did the first 3 games, and certainly games 2 and 3. I'm not sure Nebraska learned anything against Akron and Houston Christian, and that was a fear of mine going into the Michigan game. You beat the teams that you should have beaten the way you should have beaten them. But with those good sparring sessions, sparring partners for not just Michigan, but for Big Ten play. And I think that those were kind of fool's gold to a certain extent. Cincinnati was a good test, but that was a month ago. So I think this comes at a very good time, and get healthy. I'm not sure who's all that banged up. You don't hear a lot about that injury-wise with Nebraska. Okay, so now go heal your bruised ego and figure out how to not let that happen again.
See, I think it comes at the good time. They played 4 games. They've gotten through it, knock on wood, healthy. I did think yesterday, boy, in this game where your offensive line needs some help, Markway probably would have played a lot yesterday because that's what he does is block. But that's neither here nor there. He was on crutches yesterday. I think it's a good bye week because I'll be curious to see if Nebraska makes some subtle changes personnel-wise. What if Elijah Pritchette is your full-time left tackle and Gatula slides over to become your full-time right tackle? And then in the back end of defense, do they mix it up a little bit? Other than that, there's not many drastic personnel changes, but there might be some subtle ones that you noticed against Michigan that might be able to help you moving forward or helps with rotations.
Well, give me fellas that can do their job, 1, and then 2, when it comes to run support, make the tackles.
Well, you got to be smart and run fits. Buford wasn't very good yesterday. Can I sneak one in here? Because I'm curious on you guys real quick.
Yeah.
Elijah Pritchette, thoughts?
I think there needs to be an ultimatum, because he's pissed that he's 3rd team, 2nd team, and he's not getting paid to be 1st, 2nd, or 3rd team. So either there needs to be a pay cut based on his performance, or his performance needs to jump and he needs to be the best offensive lineman on the team at a critical spot.
Yeah,
I liked your take on maybe fiddling with the tackle options. You have
because I think Gunner is more comfortable at right tackle. That's why I say that.
Yeah,
it's where he played his whole career aside from last season.
I think they need to look. This is not the era of you can't criticize because they're college kids. They're making more than their coaches, and people are sitting in the seats, and they're somehow, some way or another, having to put money in the pockets of the players now. I'm not saying they shouldn't be paid, but look, there needs to be what's the ROI on this?
Well, it's an attitude adjustment. You're an employee, dude. You're getting 7 figures, and you need to start doing this, or your 7 figures goes away and hit the bricks. Sorry,
it's a business now. So all last season we went through the Mazuka. Is he? Will he? What happened? I know there was reasons for him taking a trip, Purdue week, and not everybody knew the full story on that. So there were some criticisms that was deserved. A few criticisms probably not, but the ongoing drama as to whether or not he's going to be a factor and is going to be one of your best players as he was supposed to be going forward, that determination needs to be made. And if it's not going to happen, then do something about it so that this isn't a topic of conversation week after week after week. Will he, won't he, where is he, what's he doing, what's the story, what's he going to be? Make a decision and let the rest of the team understand that too. This is the way you got to play. And if you can't play, you might get paid, but you're not going to play.
And I do want to note,
this can't be ongoing.
I want to note yesterday, Pritchette wasn't very good either. He only played 2 series, and people are all going to look at the false start, but you look on the snap. It wasn't on him. Well, I agree with you. And you look at the snap to snap though. He also didn't look great at that left tackle spot, both in pass protection and in run blocking. There was one play where he got beat, and then he ended up coming up kind of holding his back and walking a little gingerly and stiffly back to the line of scrimmage. So I wonder if he was a little bit banged up going in or if something happened, but he also was not very good at left tackle either. So it's not like you play him all game and things drastically change for you.
He changes your run game, though.
He didn't look great there yesterday.
No, not against Michigan, but against the other teams, he'll look great.
And I need to go back and rewatch, but whenever he was in, I was kind of focused on what he was doing, and it wasn't anything special, I didn't think. But I'll go back and rewatch that. So I don't think he's the magic cure-all at left tackle that people think he might be if he's not false starting. But I did like his play through the first couple weeks of the season more than some other options at left tackle.
Tug of war with this is what we need you to do in practice. And we need you to do your assignments and be sound and all that stuff. And if it's not up to the coach's satisfaction, I have a real hard time playing him because you've got this standard you set, everyone's got to follow, supposedly, and that's just kind of how it is. Can you, by now, shouldn't you be on the same page as a player and
that's what I'm saying. It needs to end. It can't be a continual week after week drama as to whether or not what's the story in the story.
Well, sometimes, guys are not choir boys. Guys sometimes step out of line. But sometimes guys are your best option at that position. And you know what? You got to win some football games. If you had other guys that were better than him and you could just throw them to the wolves, okay, that's a business.
Yeah, the old you need him.
Well, I mean,
it could be too.
Mazuka last year when he was playing, he was Nebraska's best offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. And now he stepped over the line he was more of a pain in the ass than Pritchette. Okay.
Yeah.
So at some point you say enough is enough, and you can't disrespect the brand and the people that are in the brand. Pritchette hasn't done that. I just think, some of the things that came from Tuscaloosa are still there. But, man, when he's on, he's your best offensive lineman. And here's the thing. You got a $3 million quarterback who is either going to start seeing ghosts or is going to get killed. And I'd hate to have that on my watch as a coach.
No.
Or so I'm one. So I think this is an important week for Nebraska football. I know they won't have a normal week because it's a bye week, but they got to make some movement this week on this week they got to be a better football team. Because October is going to begin and everybody's going to go, well, Nebraska should be 4-0. Well, if you're not 4-0, people are like, Jesus, then you put yourself back in an opportunity to play USC again when maybe both of you are ranked. And at some point, before all of us leave the God's green earth, Nebraska will find a way to win one of these games, and then they'll validate the process. But until then, we're going to sit here and go, yeah, until you prove us right. I was stupid. I picked Nebraska to beat Michigan, which I did.
It's the Iron Horse. That's Gary Sharp. That's the pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Bronco fan, Chris Schmidt. We'll holler at you next time. Catch Gary and Matt on 1620 The Zones weekdays, 6 to 10 a.m. Find us with the Average Joe Sports Show during the week on KFOR and around different stations in the state of Nebraska, as we'll be with you 4 to 6 Monday through Friday. And then we get together for the weekend edition Saturdays and, of course, Sunday Live. Thanks for hanging out. And we'll talk some more Big Red football with you this week with the Average Joe Sports Show. Thanks.